Saturday mornings belonged to Emma. No matter how busy life became, Daniel Brooks never scheduled work before noon on Saturdays. Those mornings were reserved for pancakes, bicycle rides, library visits, and whatever adventure his 8-year-old daughter imagined. "Dad! The pancakes look like octopuses again." Daniel laughed as he flipped another misshapen pancake. "I call that artistic freedom." Emma giggled. "I think you call it bad cooking." Daniel placed a dramatic hand over his heart. "After 12 years in the Navy, this is the respect I get." "You burned the first one." "That's called quality control." Their tiny kitchen filled with laughter. The apartment wasn't fancy. The cabinets were old. The table had scratches from years of use. But every corner felt warm because it was filled with love. For years earlier, Daniel had lost his wife, Hannah, after a sudden illness. Leaving the Navy had been the hardest decision of his career. He loved serving his country. But he loved being Emma's father even more. He refused assignments that would keep him away from her. When Hannah passed away, he resigned. Friends told him he was throwing away an incredible career. Daniel always answered the same way. "My daughter only gets one childhood." He never regretted his choice. Life after the military wasn't easy. Daniel worked as a logistics consultant for shipping companies. The income paid the bills. Barely. But it gave him flexibility to attend school plays, doctor's appointments, and bedtime story hour. Emma never wondered whether her father would be there. He always was. One Tuesday afternoon, Daniel received an unexpected phone call from his longtime Navy friend, Marcus. "I need a favor." Daniel smiled. "That's usually expensive." Marcus laughed. "Not this one. My wife is insisting we arrange a dinner." Daniel immediately understood. A blind date. Technically. Daniel sighed. "You know I'm not looking to date." "I know. But just have dinner. If there's no connection, no problem." Daniel hesitated. "I don't know." Marcus lowered his voice. "She's a wonderful person. Kind. Brilliant. Successful. But people rarely see past her appearance." Daniel frowned. "What do you mean?" Marcus answered carefully. "She's overweight. Very overweight. And unfortunately, too many men judge her before they know her." Daniel became quiet. After several seconds, he replied. "Marcus. You know me better than that." "I do. That's why I'm asking." Daniel finally agreed. One dinner. No promises. Across town, Victoria Lawson closed another exhausting board meeting. At 42 years old, she had transformed Lawson Technologies into one of the fastest-growing engineering companies in the country. Investors admired her decisions. Employees respected her honesty. Business magazines frequently listed her among the nation's most influential CEOs. Yet interviews never focused on her achievements for very long. Eventually, reporters asked uncomfortable questions. "Why haven't you married? Is your career the reason?" Some simply criticized her appearance without ever mentioning her accomplishments. Victoria had heard every cruel comment imaginable. Too heavy. Too unattractive. Too intimidating. Too successful. After years of disappointing dates with people interested only in her wealth or unwilling to see beyond her appearance, she quietly stopped trying. When her assistant mentioned the dinner Marcus had arranged, Victoria almost declined. "I don't think this is a good idea." Her assistant smiled. "Marcus says he's different." Victoria laughed softly. "They all say that." "No. He said this man spent 12 years in the Navy raising a reputation for character. Not charm. Character." Those words stayed with Victoria. Saturday evening arrived. Daniel asked Emma to help choose his tie. "The blue one." "Why?" "It makes your eyes look happy." Daniel smiled. "I didn't know ties could do that." they can. Emma carefully straightened his collar. Are you nervous? A little. She hugged him tightly. Just be yourself. Daniel kissed her forehead. I was planning to. At the restaurant, Victoria arrived first. She chose a quiet table near the window. Years of awkward first dates had taught her to expect certain things. The surprised expression. The forced smile. The polite excuse about needing to leave early. She no longer feared rejection. She simply expected it. A few minutes later, Daniel entered. The hostess pointed toward Victoria's table. He smiled warmly as he approached. Victoria. She stood. Daniel. Instead of the brief handshake she expected, Daniel gently pulled out her chair before sitting across from her. It's nice to finally meet you. Victoria noticed something immediately. He hadn't stared. He hadn't looked surprised. He hadn't glanced at her body before speaking. His eyes stayed respectfully on her face. It was such a small thing. Yet strangely unfamiliar. For the first time in years, she felt like someone had noticed the person before the appearance. Neither of them realized that this ordinary dinner would become the beginning of a story that would quietly change both of their lives forever. The waiter handed them their menus, but for several minutes neither Daniel nor Victoria paid much attention to the food. Instead, they talked. Not about careers. Not about money. Not about appearances. Daniel asked about her favorite books. Victoria asked about life in the Navy. He shared funny stories about sailors trying to cook on rough seas. She laughed so hard that nearby diners glanced over with smiles. For the first time in years, Victoria forgot to worry about how people were looking at her. Halfway through dinner, the waiter arrived with dessert menus. Daniel smiled. I'm afraid I'll have to skip dessert. Victoria looked surprised. You don't like sweets? He laughed. I do. But I promised my daughter would make hot chocolate together before bedtime. Victoria smiled softly. You never break a promise. I try not to. When you're a single parent, small promises become very important. Those words stayed with her. When dinner ended, Daniel walked her to her car. Thank you. I had a really nice evening. Victoria looked at him carefully. So did I. She hesitated. Then asked the question she had almost expected to ask all night. Can I ask you something honestly? Of course. When you saw me, were you disappointed? Daniel looked genuinely confused. Why would I be? She looked down. Most men are. Daniel was quiet for a moment. Then he answered with complete sincerity. I noticed someone who smiled with her eyes before she smiled with her mouth. I noticed someone who treats the restaurant staff by name. I noticed someone who listened every time I spoke. I honestly didn't spend the evening judging your appearance. I spent it getting to know you. Victoria felt tears gathering unexpectedly. No one had ever answered that question like that before. Over the following weeks, they met again. Sometimes for coffee. Sometimes for a walk through their botanical gardens. Sometimes at the local bookstore. Daniel never treated Victoria like a project to fix or someone who needed reassurance every 5 minutes. He simply treated her like every other person, with respect, humor, and genuine curiosity. One Saturday, Victoria finally met Emma. The little girl ran straight toward Daniel after soccer practice. Daddy. She stopped when she saw Victoria. Hi. Victoria smiled nervously. Hello. Emma looked at her for a few seconds. Then asked. Do you like pancakes? Victoria laughed. I do. My dad makes terrible ones. Daniel covered his face dramatically. I thought we agreed never to discuss the octopus pancakes. Emma giggled. You should come over one Saturday. I'll teach him. Victoria laughed so hard that tears filled her eyes. Daniel smiled. I think that's an invitation. Slowly, weekends became shared adventures. Trips to museums. Picnics in the park. Board games that Emma somehow always won. Victoria never tried to replace Emma's mother. She respected the memory of the woman Daniel had loved. Instead, she simply became another person who cared deeply for the little girl. One afternoon, Emma came home from school unusually quiet. Daniel knelt beside her. "What's wrong?" She looked toward Victoria. "A boy said families only count if they look normal." The room became silent. Victoria's smile faded. She knew exactly how cruel children, and sometimes adults, could be. Before she could speak, Daniel gently took Emma's hand. "Do you know what makes a family?" Emma shook her head. "People who choose each other. People who protect each other. People who show up. It has nothing to do with what anyone looks like." Victoria quietly wiped away a tear. Months later, Lawson Technologies held its annual charity gala. For years, Victoria had attended alone. This time, Daniel and Emma accompanied her. As they entered the ballroom, photographers gathered. One reporter asked, "Ms. Lawson. Many people are curious. How did the two of you meet?" Victoria smiled. "Through friends." The reporter continued. "What attracted you to a former Navy officer?" Before Daniel could answer, Victoria spoke. "He looked at me. And somehow managed to see everything except the thing the rest of the world noticed first." The room became completely silent. Another reporter turned to Daniel. "And what did you see?" Daniel smiled warmly. "I saw a brilliant woman. A generous leader. Someone who volunteers at children's hospitals without telling anyone. I saw someone who laughs at terrible jokes." Victoria laughed. "They really are terrible." "They are. But you laugh anyway." The audience smiled. A year later, Daniel proposed during one of their Saturday pancake breakfasts. He placed the ring box beside a badly shaped pancake. Emma clapped excitedly. Victoria laughed through happy tears. "Is this why the pancake looks like a heart?" Daniel grinned. "It was supposed to. I thought it was a potato. It became a heart eventually." She nodded. "Then my answer is yes." On their wedding day, Emma stood between them holding both of their hands. During the reception, she tapped her glass with a spoon. "I want to say something." Everyone turned toward her. "My dad says heroes don't always wear uniforms. They are just people who make others feel safe." She smiled at Victoria. "And Miss Victoria, you always made us feel loved." There wasn't a dry eye in the room. Years later, whenever someone asked Victoria what changed her life, she never mentioned billion-dollar deals or business awards. She smiled and answered simply, "I met a man who treated me like a person before he treated me like a first impression." People remembered the story because a Navy single dad went on a blind date with an obese CEO. But those who knew the full story understood that the remarkable part wasn't the date. It was that kindness replaced judgment, respect replaced assumptions, and two people discovered that the strongest relationships are built not on appearances, but on the simple decision to truly see one another.